What would you do if you discovered your father sold your soul to pay a debt you never knew existed? Elena Voss thought her biggest problem was the eviction notice on her door, until a man with mismatched eyes walked through her locked apartment and told her she had 30 days before hell came to collect. Cale Nocturne isn't just a debt collector. He's a Nephilim, half angel, half demon, trapped in a war inside his own body, forced to hunt souls for 2 centuries or face eternal damnation himself. He's supposed to claim her. She's supposed to die. But when their eyes meet, something neither heaven nor hell predicted ignites between them. Now Elena faces an impossible choice. Find an innocent person to trade in her place, run until the inevitable end catches up, or do something no one has ever dared. Challenge hell's contract in a trial that could free them both, or erase her from existence entirely. With her blood awakening ancient powers she never knew she possessed, and a bond forming. With the very man sent to destroy her, Elena realizes the truth. Her father didn't just sell her soul. He sold her destiny, and the only way to reclaim it is to stand beside a monster the world condemned, look the devil's favorite duke in the eye, and prove that some debts were never meant to be paid. But when Cale's past collides with her present, when every demon in hell wants to claim her newly awakened power, and when love becomes the most dangerous weapon either of them could wield, how do you fight for freedom when the cost might be each other's souls? The eviction notice felt heavier than paper should feel. Elena Voss stared at the red letters stamped across the top. Final notice, 30 days, and wondered distantly if this was what drowning felt like. 3 jobs, 70-hour weeks. It still wasn't enough. Her father had been dead for 6 months. The debt he left behind refused to die with him. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass of her apartment window, watching. The city lights blur through exhausted tears she wouldn't let fall. Crying was a luxury. Crying took time. She had a shift at the diner in 4 hours, then the cleaning service at dawn, then her actual job, the one that meant something, restoring art at the museum. Beautiful things. Priceless things. Things she'd never be able to afford. The scar on her left wrist burned. It always burned when she was stressed. A pale raised line that looked like a cigarette burn but felt like touching a stove. The doctors had called it psychosomatic. Phantom pain from childhood trauma she couldn't remember. Elena had learned to ignore it the way she ignored most things lately. Bills, hunger, the fact that she was 26 and had nothing to show for it except debt that wasn't hers, and an empty apartment that wouldn't be hers much longer. She didn't hear him enter. One moment, she was alone. The next, ice crystallized in her lungs. The temperature dropped so fast her breath fogged. And there was someone behind her. She could feel him the way you feel a thunderstorm before it breaks. Inevitable, electric, wrong. Elena spun. The man stood in her living room like he'd materialized from shadow. Tall, impossibly still. His face was the kind of beautiful that made you think of funeral flowers and last words. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair that fell past his collar, skin too pale to be healthy. But it was his eyes that stopped her scream in her throat. 2 different colors. Amber on the left, like honey held up to sunlight. Gray on the right, the color of a storm about to turn violent. They didn't blink, didn't waver, just watched her with the focused intensity of a predator that had already decided she couldn't run. Elena Voss. His voice was smoke and gravel, the kind of voice that shouldn't sound gentle but somehow did. Daughter of Marcus Voss, born April 19, 1999. Architect, 3 current employers. Net worth negative $47,612. He paused, tilted his head. You're shorter than I expected. The words came out strangled. How did you get in here? You didn't lock the door. I did. Locks don't work on me. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. His gaze dropped to her wrist, the one that burned. That's going to get worse, by the way. The mark. It knows I'm here. Elena's hand flew to cover the scar. Who the hell are you? Cale Nocturne. He moved then, just 2 steps, but suddenly he was close enough that she could see the details that made her brain scream wrong. His right side, from his jawline down the column of his neck, disappeared beneath his black shirt, but she could see scars there. Pale, raised lines that caught the light like they were glowing. His left side was worse, or different. Ink-black tattoos crawled up from his collar, moving. Actually, moving. She watched a symbol that looked like ancient script slide from behind his ear down to his collarbone. I'm a collector, he continued. Debts, specifically. Your father took something that wasn't his, made a deal he couldn't keep. And when people make deals they can't keep, people like me show up to collect. The floor felt unsteady. My father didn't. He wouldn't. He did. Cale reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Old paper. The kind that looked like it might crumble if you breathed on it wrong. He offered it to her. Contract signed in blood. Dated 6 years ago. He was desperate. Dying. Someone offered him a cure for a price. Elena didn't want to take it. Taking it made it real. But her hand moved anyway, numb fingers unfolding paper that felt warm to the touch. Her father's signature stared back at her. Marcus Voss, in his careful architect's handwriting. Below it, terms she couldn't understand. Words in Latin maybe, or something older. And at the bottom, a clause that made her stomach turn. Payment due upon death of signatory. Firstborn. Soul, delivered in full to Mammon, Duke of Greed, no later than 180 days post-mortem. Firstborn, she whispered. That's you. Cale's voice was softer now, almost apologetic. Almost. The experimental treatment he received 6 years ago. The one that bought him 6 more years of life. It wasn't experimental. It was demonic. And you were the collateral he used. The paper fell from her hands. That's insane. Demons aren't... This isn't... He moved so fast she didn't see it. One moment he was across the room. The next, his hand was wrapped around her wrist, the one with the scar. The contact burned like acid, like ice, like something her body recognized but her mind couldn't process. Heat shot up her arm, and suddenly she could feel him. Not just the physical touch, but something deeper. Rage, sorrow, hunger, and beneath it all, a war. 2 voices screaming at each other inside his head, one begging for mercy she didn't understand, one demanding efficiency she feared. She gasped. He let go. The sensations cut off like someone had severed a wire. That's the mark, Cale said quietly, stepping back. His amber eye looked pained. His gray eye looked satisfied. Your father's contract created a bond. You've felt it your whole life, haven't you? The burning. The sensation that someone was watching. That something was waiting. He gestured to himself. I'm what was waiting. Elena's legs gave out. She hit the couch hard, mind racing. 6 years ago, her father had been dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6-month prognosis. She'd been 20, drowning in student loans, and he'd looked at her with tears in his eyes and said he was sorry. Sorry he couldn't stay. Sorry he couldn't help with tuition. Sorry he was leaving her alone. And then he'd gotten better. Miraculous recovery, the doctors had said. 1 in a million. He'd live 6 more years. Long enough to see her graduate. Long enough to rack up debt paying for treatments that apparently hadn't been treatments at all. Long enough to sell her soul and not tell her. 180 days, she said numbly. 6 months. He's been dead 6 months. Correct. Cale pulled his sleeve back. His left forearm was covered in those living tattoos. And as she watched, new text burned itself into his skin. Ember-bright letters in a language she didn't know. The contract just activated. You have 30 days to settle the debt. 30. Hysteria bubbled up. You just said 100. And 80. That's how long the contract stays valid, but I'm required to give 30 days notice before collection. It's a courtesy. The word sounded wrong in his mouth, like he didn't believe in courtesy but was obligated to pretend. I don't have a soul to give you. Elena was on her feet again, backing away. This isn't how the world works. You can't just walk into someone's apartment and tell them their dead father sold them to a demon. I can. I did. He moved to her. Window, looking out at the city with an expression she couldn't read. You have 30 days to find an equivalent offering. Another soul. Another trade. Something Mammon will accept in your place. He glanced back at her, and for just a second, the amber eye looked almost sad. Or you die, and I collect what's left. The scar on her wrist was on fire now. She clutched it, feeling her pulse hammer against her palm. This is insane. You're insane. I'm calling the police. They can't help you. He turned fully, and she saw it then. Really saw it. The way shadows gathered around his feet like they were alive. The way his gray eye reflected no light at all, just swallowed it. The way his scars pulsed with a rhythm that matched her racing heart. This debt is older than law, older than countries. You're in the supernatural world now, Elena, and in this world, debts are paid in full, always. She wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. Instead, she heard herself ask, what happens if I run? If I just leave, change my name, disappear? Kyle's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, got colder. I find you. Always. It's what I was made for. He moved toward her door, and she realized with sick relief that he was leaving. 30 days. I'll be watching. Wait. The word surprised her. He paused, hand on her doorknob. You said you're a collector. That means you've done this before. Have you ever... Her voice cracked. Has anyone ever gotten out of a contract like this? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, almost too quiet to hear, no. The door closed behind him. Elena stood alone in her apartment. The eviction notice forgotten on the table, the impossible contract burning in her mind. Her wrist throbbed in time with her pulse, and somewhere in the space between heartbeats, she felt it. Him, still watching, always watching. 30 days until her soul belonged to a demon. The countdown had begun. Elena didn't sleep. She sat on her couch watching the door, waiting for shadows to materialize into something impossible again. By the time gray dawn bled through her windows, she'd convinced herself it was a psychotic break. Stress-induced hallucination. The mind protecting itself from reality by creating a different, more manageable horror. Demonic debt was easier to process than eviction and poverty. At least demons had rules. She called in sick to all 3 jobs. Her voice sounded hollow on the phone, like someone else was using her mouth. Then she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and searched. Demonic contracts, soul debts, Mammon Duke of Greed. The results were mythology sites, horror movie forums, conspiracy theories that made her eyes hurt. Nothing useful. Nothing real. Her wrist burned steadily now, a constant low-grade fever beneath the scar. She'd tried ice, painkillers, covering it with a bandage that immediately soaked through with something. That wasn't blood, just heat made visible. Condensation from a wound that existed somewhere between flesh and something else entirely. The knock at her door at exactly noon made her jump hard enough to spill cold coffee across her keyboard. She knew who it was before she looked through the peephole. Knew by the way her scar flared white hot. Knew by the way the temperature dropped and her breath fogged despite it being June. Cale stood in her hallway looking exactly as impossible as he had last. Night. Same dark clothes. Same mismatched eyes. Same expression of patient inevitability, like he could wait centuries and wouldn't mind at all. Elena opened the door because not opening it felt like lying to herself. "I didn't invite you. You didn't lock the door?" He glanced past her at the mess of her apartment, coffee-stained laptop, contract papers scattered across every surface, books on demonology she'd panic-ordered for same-day delivery. Research phase. Good. That'll save time. Time? Until what? Until you understand what you're facing. He moved past her without permission, and she hated that she let him. Hated more that part of her felt relieved he was here. Something solid in a world that had stopped making sense. He picked up one of her books, a leather-bound volume on infernal hierarchies, and made a sound that might have been amusement. This is 70% wrong. Mammon doesn't have horns, and he prefers Italian suits. Elena closed the door, locked it, realized the absurdity, and unlocked it again. "Why are you here? You have 29 days left." He set the book down, fingers trailing across her scattered notes. She watched those tattoos on his left hand writhe, symbols rearranging themselves into new configurations. "I'm not allowed to collect early, but I'm also not prohibited from educating you about the process." How generous. The sarcasm tasted like copper. "So what? You're here to help me find another soul to trade? Someone else's daughter to throw into hell?" His amber eye met hers. For a moment, something that looked almost like pain flickered there. Then it was gone, replaced by that unreadable calm. "I'm here to explain the rules. What you do with that information is your choice." He pulled out her kitchen chair, sat like he owned the space. "Sit down, Elena. This is going to take a while." She didn't want to sit near him, didn't want to be in the same room, but her legs were shaking, and the alternative was standing. They're looking weak, so she sat. Kept the table between them like it would matter if he decided to reach for her. "Contracts," Cale began, "are the foundation of the supernatural world. They're binding across all planes of existence. Once signed in blood, they cannot be broken. Only fulfilled or transferred." Transferred. She latched onto the word. "So I can find someone willing to take your place." "Yes." His gray eye fixed on her, and she felt that gaze like a physical weight. "But equivalent exchange is required. A soul for a soul. It has to be given freely. Coercion voids the transfer. So, I just, what? Ask someone to die for me?" "Essentially." He said it without inflection, like he was describing grocery shopping. Though most people prefer more creative solutions. Criminals. Terminal patients who want to spare their family's medical debt. People who've lost everything and see damnation as no worse than their current existence. The casual horror of it made her stomach turn. "Have you done this before? Watched someone trade an innocent person to save themselves?" Cale's jaw tightened. "Just a fraction, just for a second. I collect debts. I don't judge the transactions that create them." "That's not an answer." "No," he said quietly. "It's not." Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither of them was saying. Elena looked at her hands, at the scar that wouldn't stop burning. "My father wouldn't have done this. He wouldn't have sold me. There has to be a mistake." "There's no mistake." Cale reached across the table and she flinched, but he was only pointing to the contract she'd left open to that damning clause. "Look at the date. 6 years ago, September 14th. What happened that day?" She didn't want to remember. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction of being right. But the memory came anyway, sharp and clear. He got his diagnosis, the cancer. They gave him 6 months. And 3 days later, he started an experimental trial, clinical research he called it. Said they'd accepted him based on his case profile. Her voice was barely a whisper. He got better. Complete remission within 3 weeks. There was no trial. Cale's voice was gentle in a way that hurt worse than cruelty. There was a man who approached him in a hospital parking lot. who offered him 6 more years of life in exchange for something he thought he'd never have to pay. Your father was dying, Elena. Desperate. He made a choice. He did. Cale pulled his sleeve up further, revealing more of those living tattoos. She watched them shift, revealing names. Hundreds of names in that same ember-bright script, layered over each other on his skin. These are my contracts. Every debt I've ever collected. Your father's name is here. He pointed to a spot just above his wrist. Marcus Voss. And below it, the collateral. You. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. Why didn't he tell me? Because people never think the bill will come due. Kyle lowered his sleeve, covering the names. They think they'll find a way out. Or that they'll die before collection. Your father had 6 years to prepare you, to explain, to try to break the contract. His mismatched eyes held hers. He did none of those things. He spent his borrowed time pretending the debt didn't exist. And now I'm supposed to pay for his cowardice. Bitterness flooded her mouth. Yes. The simple honesty of... It broke something in her. Elena laughed, high and sharp. This is insane. I'm sitting in my kitchen talking to a what? Demon? Angel? What are you? For the first time, something like real emotion crossed his face. Both. Neither. He stood, moved to her window. In the daylight, she could see more details. The way his scars on the right side seemed to pulse with a rhythm that wasn't quite a heartbeat. The way the shadows on his left side moved independently, crawling up the wall behind him. I'm Nephilim, half angel, half demon. An abomination in the eyes of heaven and a tool for hell. That's not possible. You're holding a contract signed by your dead father promising your soul to a duke of hell. Possible is no longer relevant. He turned back to her, and the look on his face was complicated, tired, ancient. My father was a fallen angel who loved a human woman bound to demonic servitude. I'm the result, born with light in my veins and darkness in my bones. When I was 7, both sides came for them. Celestials executed my father for the crime of loving beneath his station. Infernals claimed my mother for breaking her contract. I watched them both die. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. His voice went flat. Hell took me instead. Raised me as a collector. Taught me to track debts, to feel them the way you feel heat on your skin. They carved these, he gestured to his tattoos, into my flesh so I could never forget what I am. A tool. A hunter. The thing that comes when people try to run from what they owe. And if you don't collect? The question slipped out before she could stop it. What happens to you? Kyle's laugh was bitter. I have my own contracts. Debts I've accumulated over 200 years of existence. If I fail to collect a soul I'm assigned, those debts become due immediately. He met her eyes, and she saw it there. The same trapped desperation she felt. I'm as much a prisoner as you are. The only difference is I've had longer to accept it? 200 years. The number made her dizzy. He looked 30 at most, beautiful in that unsettling way that made you think of things that lured sailors onto rocks. But his eyes were old, exhausted, like he'd been carrying weight for lifetimes and couldn't remember what it felt like to set it down. So we're both screwed. Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. You collect me or you get collected. I run or I die. There's no way out. There's always a way out. He moved back to the table, and this time when he sat, he looked different. Less predator. More tired. It just costs more than most people are willing to pay. His gaze dropped to her wrist. That bond between us, the mark. It's getting stronger because we're in proximity. You can feel me now, can't you? Sense when I'm near? She wanted to deny it. Couldn't. Yes. That's the contract recognizing both parties. In 30 days, if the debt isn't settled, that bond will complete itself. I'll be able to find you anywhere, across any distance, through any ward or protection. And when I do, he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Elena looked at her hands, at the scar that marked her as currency in a transaction she never agreed to. 29 days left. 29 days to find someone else to damn, or to accept that her father's choice had already damned her. I won't trade someone innocent. Her voice was quiet but firm. I won't do what he did. Cale studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then, you'd better hope we find another solution. We? She looked up sharply. You said you're here to collect, not to help. I said I collect debts. He stood, headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. I didn't say I've never wanted to fail. He was gone before she could ask what he meant. Elena sat alone in her apartment as afternoon light turned gold and then gray. Her wrist burned. The countdown continued. 29 days. And despite everything, she believed him. Cale Nocturne wanted to fail. Wanted to let her slip through his fingers and face whatever hell would do to him in return. She just didn't know if she could let him. 23 days left, and Elena had stopped pretending she could fix this alone. The occult bookstore smelled like sage and desperation. Tucked between a pawn shop and a closed-down deli in a part of the city tourists never saw, it advertised protection spells and tarot readings in a window so dusty the words were barely readable. Elena pushed through the door, bell chiming overhead, and wondered if this was rock bottom or just another step down. The woman behind the counter looked up from a book, written in symbols Elena couldn't identify. 60-something, silver hair in a long braid, eyes that assessed her with uncomfortable accuracy. You're marked. Not a question. Elena's hand went instinctively to her wrist. The scar was visible now even through her jacket sleeve, glowing faintly like dying embers. She'd stopped trying to hide it. I need help breaking a contract. Demonic or fae? The casual way she asked made Elena's knees weak with relief. Someone who believed. Someone who knew. Demonic. Soul debt. Inherited from my father. The woman's expression shifted. Not quite pity. More like the look you give someone standing in traffic who doesn't know the light's about to change. Can't be broken. Only transferred or fulfilled. You know this already. Or you wouldn't be here looking. Like you haven't slept in a week. There has to be another way. There isn't. The woman closed her book. But there are loopholes. Contracts that old. How old is it? 6 years since signing. Original terms date back to, I don't know, medieval law, I think? Pre-Renaissance. The woman came around the counter, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose bones had seen too many winters. Those contracts have grandfathered clauses, loopholes built in when hell still pretended to play. Fair. She gestured to a back room separated by beaded curtains. Come, we'll see what you're working with. Elena followed, aware of every object lining the shelves. Jars of things she didn't want to identify, crystals that pulsed with inner light, books that felt like they were watching her pass. The back room was smaller, cramped, dominated by a round table covered in layered cloth. Candles already burning despite the afternoon light filtering through barred windows. Show me the contract. Elena pulled it from her bag. The paper was warmer than it should be, like it had been pressed against a living chest. The woman took it carefully, reverence mixed with revulsion, and spread it flat on the table. Her fingers traced the Latin text, lips moving silently. Minutes passed. The candles flickered, though there was no draft. Finally, this is airtight, professional-grade work. Mammon doesn't make mistakes. But you said loopholes. One, maybe. The woman pointed to a clause near the E. Bottom. Words so small Elena had missed them entirely. Contracts signed under duress can be challenged if the signatory was manipulated into believing false information. If your father was lied to about the terms, if he didn't understand he was selling you, you could argue coercion. Hope flared, desperate and sharp. How do I prove that? You'd need to summon Mammon himself, challenge the contract directly, present evidence that your father didn't understand the true cost. The woman looked up, and her eyes were sad. And if you fail, if Mammon rules against you, the debt comes due immediately. No 30-day grace period, no appeal. The hope died as quickly as it had come. So I gamble everything on maybe proving my dead father was tricked. Or you find a substitute soul. The woman folded the contract, handed it back. Or you run until the collector finds you, and it ends badly anyway. Elena's wrist burned hotter. She gasped, clutching it, and the woman's eyes widened. He's close. The one tracking you. Nephilim, isn't he? How did you... That mark. It's not just contract bond. It's proximity alert. He's within 100 feet. The woman moved to her door, flipped the sign to closed, through 3 separate locks. They can't enter uninvited on sanctified ground, but they can wait. And they're very patient. Elena moved to the window, peered through the bars. The street outside looked normal. Pedestrians. Traffic. Nothing supernatural. Then she saw him. Cale stood across the street beneath a broken streetlight, hands in his pockets. Absolutely still. Those mismatched eyes locked on the shop. On her. Even from this distance, she felt the weight of his attention, heavy and inescapable. He didn't move. Didn't have to. His presence alone said everything. I know where you are. I know what you're doing. I'm waiting. He's been following you. The woman's voice came from beside her, quiet. He has to. It's his job. No. The woman pointed to details Elena had missed. Look at his posture, the way he's standing. That's not hunting. That's guarding. Elena looked again. Cale's position put him between the shop and the mouth of an alley 2 buildings down. His attention wasn't actually on her. It was scanning the street, the rooftops, the spaces between things. Like he was watching for something else. Something worse. What would he be guarding me from? Other collectors. Rival demons. Once word spreads that Mammon has a debt coming due, every infernal entity in the city will want to stake a claim. Trade offers. Hostile acquisition. Sometimes they just try to kill the collateral to spite each other. The woman moved away from the window. A Nephilim who guards his mark is either very professional or very conflicted. Elena thought about the way Cale had said, I didn't say I've never wanted to fail. The exhaustion in his ancient eyes. The way his amber eye looked pained when his gray eye looked satisfied. He's both. Then you might have a chance. The woman returned to her table, began pulling books from shelves with focused intensity. If he's conflicted, he's vulnerable. Nephilim walk a razor's edge, angel and demon constantly at war inside them. Push the right side and you might tip the balance. I don't want to manipulate him. You want to survive? The woman's tone was sharp. Because that thing out there, conflicted or not, will collect your soul in 23 days if you don't give him a reason not to. And the only reason that works on Nephilim is making one side stronger than the other. Elena's stomach turned. How? The woman laid out 3 books, open to marked pages. Rituals, invocations, methods to strengthen angelic essence or feed demonic nature. All of them required proximity, touch, trust. The angel in him will resist causing harm. Feed that side. Remind him of mercy, of free will, of the injustice of your father's choice. Make him feel your humanity. And the demon? Wants what all demons want. Chaos. Hunger. The demon in him doesn't care about justice. It cares about completion. Efficiency. The woman's finger traced a particularly violent ritual. But it can also be bargained with. Demons respect equivalent exchange. Offer him something he wants more than your soul. I have nothing. You have 23 days of his attention. Nephilim are isolated, hunted by both sides, lonely in ways humans can't comprehend. The woman's eyes met hers. Make yourself valuable alive. Make him need you. More than he needs to complete the contract. It felt like drowning, like choosing between manipulation and death. Elena looked out the window again. Cale was still there, still watching. A car passed too close to him and swerved, the driver's face white with instinctive terror. Human minds couldn't process what he was, so they invented reasons to avoid him. Drunk. Dangerous. Wrong. How many centuries had he stood like that, waiting for people to die so he could collect pieces of their soul? How? Many times had he wanted to fail and couldn't. There's a third option. The words came out before Elena could stop them. What if I help him instead? The woman blinked. Help him do what? Break free. He said he has contracts of his own, debts keeping him enslaved to hell. What if instead of fighting over my soul, we work together to break both our chains? Silence. Then the woman laughed, short and bitter. Child, you're talking about going to war with hell itself. Contracts older. Then countries. Powers that would crush you like an insect. I'm already crushed. Elena's voice was steady. I'm already dead in 23 days. At least this way, if I fail trying to free both of us instead of just damning someone else. The woman studied her for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most naive. She pulled one more book, this one bound in leather so old it was nearly black. This contains rituals for severing infernal bonds. Most require 3 things: willing consent of both parties, a catalyst of immense supernatural power, and a sacrifice that hell considers equivalent to the debt owed. Where do I find a catalyst? You don't. They're relics, hidden, guarded, the kind of thing people die looking for. The woman pushed the book toward her anyway. But if you're determined to try the impossible, at least try it informed. Elena took the book. It was heavy, not just physically. She could feel the weight of the knowledge inside. The price paid for every word. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if you survive. The woman walked her to the door, unlocked it. And girl, if you're going to try to save a Nephilim, remember, they're not human. They're not redeemable in the way you think. The best you can hope for is making the angel strong enough to cage the demon, but it'll always be there, always hungry. Elena stepped out into the cooling evening. Cale was still across the street. Their eyes met, and she felt it again. That pull, the bond strengthening. She could sense his war now, faintly. 2 voices arguing. One saying she's not your enemy, the other saying she's not your responsibility. She crossed the street. He watched her approach with an expression she couldn't read. You've been following me all day, she said. You've been researching ways to break contracts. His tone was neutral. I had to make sure you didn't do something suicidal. Like summoning. Mammon? His jaw tightened. Especially like summoning Mammon. The woman in there said other demons might come after me. That you're guarding me from them. Professional responsibility. But his amber eye wouldn't meet hers. Elena took a breath. Committed. I want to make a deal with you. Both eyes snapped to her then. The amber one wary, the gray one interested. Hungry. You can't bargain with me. I don't have that authority. Not that kind of deal. A partnership. She held up the black book. I help you find a way to break your contracts. You help me break mine. We work together instead of against each other. Cale stared at her like she'd suggested they fly to the moon. That's impossible. So is everything else about this situation. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the cold radiating from his right side, the heat from his left. Close enough to see the war in his eyes intensify. 23 days, Cale. If we're both dead anyway, why not try? For a moment, just a moment, something like hope flickered in the amber eye. Then it was gone, crushed under centuries of learned helplessness. Because trying and failing hurts worse than never trying at all. I don't believe you believe that. His hand moved, faster than she could track, and suddenly his fingers were wrapped around her wrist. The scarred one. Contact seared through her, and this time she didn't pull away. She let herself feel it. All of it. The rage of his demon side screaming complete the contract. The anguish of his angel side begging don't hurt her. The exhaustion of a soul that had been at war with itself for 200 years and didn't know how to stop. And beneath it all, so faint she almost missed it, a whisper of something that felt like desperate, terrified hope. "If I help you," he said quietly, "and we fail, hell will do things to me that make death look like mercy. Then we don't fail." He laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "You don't understand what you're asking. I understand I'd rather die fighting with you than live knowing I damned someone else." She turned her hand, gripped his wrist in return, felt his pulse. Too fast, too irregular, two rhythms competing. 23 days. Help me try. Kyle's eyes closed. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't breathe. Then, "You're going to get us both killed. Is that a yes?" When he opened his eyes, something had shifted. The war was still there, but now both sides were pointed in the same direction. Inan. The same enemy. That's a maybe. Which is more than I've allowed myself in a century. Elena felt her wrist stop burning. Not completely. The mark was still there, still glowing faintly. But the pain had transformed into something else. Something that felt almost like connection. "We start tomorrow," she said. "We start now." He released her wrist, gestured down the street. "Because the thing I was guarding you from just arrived. And it brought friends." Elena turned. The alley mouth Cale had been watching was darker now. Wrong. Shadows moved independently of the fading light, coalescing into shapes with too many limbs and eyes that glowed red in the gathering dusk. Lesser demons. Scavengers. Coming to test whether Mammon's prize was worth stealing. Cale stepped in front of her, and for the first time, she saw his scars flare bright. Angelic light on his right, demonic shadow on his left, both sides ready to fight. "Stay behind me," he said. "And Elena, welcome to the war, the demons." Moved like oil spills given teeth and purpose. 3 of them, maybe 4. It was hard to count when their forms kept shifting, limbs multiplying and receding, bodies that refused to hold a single shape. The air reeked of sulfur and rotting meat. Elena's stomach heaved. Kyle didn't move, didn't even tense. Just stood there between her and the approaching nightmares with the kind of stillness that came before violence. "Scavengers," he said, voice flat. "Bottom feeders looking for easy prey. They think because you're marked, you're undefended. Aren't I?" "No." The word came out wrong. 2 voices overlapping. One warm, one cold. His right side blazed brighter, those angelic scars erupting with light that made Elena's eyes water. His left side darkened until shadows pooled at his feet like living things. "You have me." The lead demon laughed. It sounded like metal scraping concrete. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Cale Nocturne, the collector, Mammon's favorite pet. It circled closer, staying just outside the halo of streetlight. "We're not here for trouble. Just wanted to assess the merchandise. See if the Duke's claim is legitimate." "It's legitimate. Leave." "Or what?" Another demon slithered forward, this one mostly serpentine with too many human eyes clustered along its spine. "You'll report us? You think Mammon cares about scavengers when he's days away from collecting a witness bloodline? Do you even know what she is, Collector?" Cale's shoulders tightened, just slightly. Enough that Elena felt it through the bond thrumming between them. "I know what the contract says. That's all that matters. The contract says soul debt. It doesn't say what kind of soul." The serpent demon's laugh was wet, bubbling. "She's descended from the witness line, the ones who used to arbitrate supernatural law before the Reformation. Her blood can seal treaties, break curses. Her soul isn't just valuable. It's a weapon. Elena's breath caught. The occult shopwoman had mentioned witnesses, but she'd thought it was metaphor. History. Not something that still mattered. I'm just an architect. You're so much more. The third demon manifested closer, and this one held something almost like human form. Female, maybe, with skin that looked like cracked porcelain and a smile full of glass shards. That scar on your wrist? That's not just contract, Mark. That's awakening. Your father sold you before your blood activated because he knew what you'd become. Knew you were worth more unconscious than aware. The words hit like physical blows. Her father had known, had understood exactly what he was trading. Not just her soul, but her potential, her purpose, everything she could have been. Cale's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Last warning. Leave. Now. Make us half-breed. The lead demon lunged. Cale moved faster than physics should allow. One moment standing still. The next, his right hand blazing with light that seared the air itself. He caught the demon by what passed for its throat and slammed it into the pavement hard enough to crack asphalt. The creature screamed, a sound that made Elena's teeth ache, and tried to dissolve into shadow. Cale's left hand came down wreathed in darkness that swallowed the demon's escape attempt. Held it solid, corporeal, trapped between his dual nature. I said, "Leave." The other demons hesitated. Elena watched them calculate odds, assess threat level. Watch them look at Cale and see something that scared them more than their hunger. Then the serpent demon hissed, "This isn't over, Collector. That girl's blood will sing before this is done, and when it does, we'll be waiting." They melted back into the alley, gone like they'd never been there except for the scorch marks on the street and the smell of burning that wouldn't fade. Kyle released the demon he'd pinned. It scrambled away, form already dissolving, and disappeared after the others. He stood slowly, and Elena saw the cost. His scars were dimmer now, the light and shadow receding. His breathing was labored, like he'd run miles. When he turned to face her, both eyes looked exhausted. "You used both sides," she said. "Angel and demon together." "I had to. Lesser demons only respect overwhelming force." He swayed slightly. Elena moved without thinking, caught his arm. The contact sent another jolt through the bond. His pain, his exhaustion, his fear that he'd just revealed too much. "You're hurt." "I'm fine. Using both aspects simultaneously just costs." He pulled away gently, put distance between them, like he didn't trust himself this close. "We need to move. They'll regroup. Come back with reinforcements." "Wait." Elena's mind was racing, fitting pieces together. "What they said about witnesses, about my blood, is that true?" Cale was quiet for too long. Then, "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because knowing makes it worse." He started walking, forcing her to follow. "The contract says soul debt. It doesn't specify why your soul is valuable. Mammon probably assumed your father was just desperate, that you were convenient collateral. But if hell finds out you're a witness, if they realize what you could do activated, the bid war will be catastrophic." "What do you mean activated?" "Witness blood is dormant until trauma or proximity to supernatural forces triggers it." He glanced at her wrist, at the mark that was glowing brighter now, pulsing with something that looked almost alive. "Being bound to my contracts, being hunted by demons. It's waking up your bloodline. In a few days, maybe a week, you'll start manifesting abilities, seeing truth, compelling honesty, sensing supernatural presence." His jaw clenched. "Making you infinitely more valuable and infinitely more dangerous." They reached a main street. Normal people everywhere, oblivious to the fact that demons had just tried to claim her in an alley 3 blocks away. Elena felt the disconnect. Like vertigo. 2 worlds occupying the same space. One invisible to most, but bleeding through at the edges. "Take me to your place," she said. Kyle stopped walking. What? Those demons know where I live. They'll come back. And I need somewhere I can research without worrying about being ambushed every 5 minutes. She met his eyes, held them. Plus, if we're working together, I need to understand what you are, really are. Not just what hell made you. That's a bad idea. Everything about this situation is a bad idea. At least this way we're prepared. He studied her for a long moment. She could feel him through the bond now, stronger than before. Feel the angel side screaming, "This is dangerous. Don't let her close." Feel the demon side whispering, "She's already ours. What difference does it make?" And beneath both, something quieter. Something that sounded almost like loneliness saying someone finally wants to understand. "Fine," he said. "But there are rules." His apartment was in a building that looked abandoned from the outside. Graffitied walls, broken windows on the lower floors, the kind of place the city had forgotten existed. But when Kyle unlocked a door on the 7th floor and led her inside, the space was immaculate. Sparse. One large room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a kitchen alcove, a door that presumably led to a bedroom. No personal effects, no photos or books or anything that suggested someone actually lived here. It looked like a hotel room for someone who'd been staying too long and had given up pretending they'd ever leave. "You can sleep there." Cale pointed to a couch that looked barely used. "Don't touch the table." He indicated a surface covered in papers. Contracts, she realized. Dozens of them. Names and terms and debts stretching back decades. "And don't go in the bedroom. Some of my transformations are unpredictable. If I lose control, I need you to have space to run." Transformations? When one side gets too strong, it manifests physically. The angel in me sprouts wings I can't retract. The demon grows claws I can't sheath. He moved to the windows, stared out at the city like he was looking for threats. "It's been getting worse lately. The closer I get to failing a collection, the more unstable I become. Hell's way of ensuring I stay motivated." Elena set her bag down, approached the table carefully. The contracts were written in that same mixture of Latin and older languages, names glowing, faintly in emberlight. She found hers near the top. Elena Voss, collateral for Marcus Voss. 20 days remaining. Wait, 20 days? It was 23 this morning. Time moves differently in demonic accounting. Some days count double. Some don't count at all. It's arbitrary, designed to keep debtors off balance. Cale's voice was tired. "We probably have less time than you think. Then we start now." Elena pulled out the black book from the occult shop, opened it to the section on severing infernal bonds. "This says we need 3 things. Willing consent, we have that. A catalyst of supernatural power, we need to find that. And a sacrifice hell considers equivalent. The sacrifice is the impossible part." Kyle finally turned from the window. In the dim apartment light, his mismatched eyes glowed faintly. Hell doesn't accept substitutions easily. The sacrifice has to be something of equal or greater value than all my contracts combined. 2 centuries of debt. Hundreds of souls collected. The price would be... He trailed off. Would be what? Astronomical. More than any one person could pay. Maybe more than exists in the entire mortal world. He crossed to the table, pointed to his own name written in contract form on a separate page. "I belong to 12 different demon lords. Mammon owns the majority claim, but I'm fractionally bound to others. Breaking free means satisfying all of them simultaneously." Elena's hope wavered. 12 demon lords. Centuries of debt. It was too big. Too impossible. But then she looked at Cale's face, at the exhaustion etched into every line, the resignation of someone who'd stopped dreaming of freedom so long ago he'd forgotten what it looked like. And something in her chest twisted. What if the sacrifice isn't a thing? The words came slowly, idea forming as she spoke. What if it's a transformation? Witnesses can arbitrate supernatural law. What if I activated my bloodline fully, became what I'm supposed to be, and used that authority to rule your contracts void? Kale's expression shifted, went very still. That would require you to fully awaken, to embrace abilities that would mark you permanently as supernatural. You'd never be human again. I'm already not human. Not really. Not with this. She held up her glowing wrist. At least this way, I choose what I become instead of letting hell choose for me. It's not that simple. Full activation requires a trigger, usually life-threatening trauma or... He stopped. Or what? His amber eye met hers, held. Or bonding. Deep connection with a supernatural entity, the kind that rewrites your soul. The air between them felt charged. Elena understood what he wasn't saying. Mate bond. The connection already forming between them, growing stronger every moment they spent together. If they completed it, if they chose each other deliberately instead of fighting it, her blood would activate. She'd become witness, powerful enough to challenge hell itself, and bound to him forever. Would it work? Her voice came out quieter than intended. If I activated fully, if we bonded, could I free you? Theoretically. Kale's hand moved to his left forearm, traced the tattoos there. Witnesses used to arbitrate between heaven and hell. Their word was law. If you declared my contracts void, hell would have to acknowledge it. He paused. But completing a mate bond with a Nephilim is permanent, irreversible. You'd feel everything I feel. The war inside me. The hunger. The violence. Every soul I've ever collected would haunt you too. And you'd feel everything I feel. Something vulnerable flickered in his expression. Yes. Elena looked at the contracts spread across the table. 20 days left. 12 demon lords. Centuries of slavery. And one impossible choice that might save them both, or damn them more completely than any contract ever could. She reached across the table, held out her hand. Then we'd better make sure the good outweighs the bad. Kale stared at her offered hand like it was a weapon. A salvation. A test he'd already failed 1,000 times before. Then slowly, so slowly she could have pulled back at any moment, he reached out and took it. The bond flared between them, bright and burning and inevitable. And in that moment, Elena felt it all. 200 years of anguish. Every soul he'd collected screaming in chorus. The angel weeping for mercy. The demon laughing with satisfaction. And beneath it all, buried so deep she almost missed it. A spark of something that felt almost like joy. Someone had chosen him. Not his power. Not his purpose. Him. 20 days, she whispered. 20 days, he agreed. Neither of them let go. 15 days left, and Elena could taste lies on her tongue. It started small. The barista who said, "Have a nice day," with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Elena felt the insincerity like copper on her teeth. The subway beggar whose cardboard sign read, "Homeless veteran," but whose thoughts screamed with the truth. Never served, just good at looking pathetic. Every false word, every hidden intention, every pretty lie the city told itself registered in her awakening blood, like dissonance in a perfect chord. Kale noticed immediately. It started. They were in his apartment, had been for 3 days straight. Research, planning, learning to exist in the same space without the bond overwhelming them both. Elena had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt him. The war, raging inside his chest, the memories of collected souls cycling through his mind like a film reel stuck on repeat. 200 years of death. She was drowning in it. The witness awakening? She set down her coffee. It tasted wrong now. Bitter with the bean's truth. Over-roasted to hide staleness. Sold past prime. How do I make it stop? You don't. It only gets stronger. Kale sat across from her at the table covered in contracts. Both their contracts now. He'd been teaching her to read the infernal script tracing symbols with fingers that shook slightly when they got too close to hers. Eventually, you'll be able to compel truth. Make people speak only honesty even if it kills them. Witnesses were feared for a reason. Sounds like torture. It is, for everyone involved. His amber eye met hers, and she felt his worry through the bond. Sharp, acidic. How much can you sense? From me? Too much. Everything. The angel screaming every time he looked at her, begging him to let her go, save her, prove heaven was wrong about Nephilim being irredeemable. The demon whispering darker things, claim her, mark her, make her understand she belongs to us now. And beneath both voices, his own consciousness caught in the crossfire, exhausted from moderating a war that never ended. I can feel both sides, she admitted. The light and the dark. They're so loud, Kale. How do you stand it? I don't. I just survive it. He stood abruptly, moved to the window. Distance. Always putting distance between them when the bond got too intense. This is why bonding is dangerous. You're experiencing a fraction of what I live with constantly. If we complete it, if we commit fully, it'll be worse. You'll carry all of this. Forever. Elena joined him at the window. The city sprawled below them, millions of lives intersecting, colliding, each person hiding their truth behind practiced smiles. She'd been one of them a month ago. Invisible. Normal. Now she could see the threads connecting. Everything. Supernatural presence like dark veins running beneath the surface. She saw wards on buildings, sensed demons moving through crowds, felt celestial observers watching from rooftops. The world had always been like this. She just hadn't been able to see it until hell came for her soul. What if I don't want normal anymore? The question surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. What if being witness, being able to see truth, being connected to you, what if that's better than the lie I was living? Kyle turned to look at her fully. In the afternoon light, his duality was stark. The right side of his face caught the sun, scars glowing faint gold, beautiful in an otherworldly way. The left side remained shadowed, tattoos writhing restlessly, predatory. Two beings sharing one body, locked in eternal combat. You don't know what you're saying. I do. She stepped closer. The bond flared, pulling taut between them. I've spent 15 days feeling your pain, your guilt. Every soul you've collected weighing on you like stones. You think I don't understand the cost? I do. And I'm still here. You're here because you have no choice. I have every choice. Her voice was steady. I could run, try to hide for 15 more days. I could find some desperate person and trade them like my father traded me. I could summon Mammon and gamble everything on a legal technicality. She held his gaze, amber and gray, light and dark, war-given eyes. Instead, I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing to fight for both of us. Something in his expression cracked. The careful control he maintained, slipping just enough that she saw beneath it. Raw, desperate hope that hurt to witness. If we complete the bond and it doesn't work, if you activate fully and still can't break the contracts, hell will own us both. You'll be trapped in this war with me, bound to a monster. You're not a monster. I've killed. The words came out harsh. Collected souls that screamed, dragged. People to damnation who begged for mercy. The demon in me enjoyed it. Even the angel couldn't stop it because orders are orders and I'm a weapon before I'm a person. And you hated every second. Elena could feel it through the bond, the self-loathing, the crushing guilt. The demon might have enjoyed it, but you, the part that's neither angel nor demon, the part that's just Kale, you suffered. That's not monstrous. That's being forced into monstrosity and refusing to let it destroy your humanity. His hand came up, almost touching her face, then stopped, shaking. You see too much. That's the point of witnesses. We see truth. She caught his hand, pressed it to her cheek. The contact sent electricity through the bond. His shock, his need, his terror that this was real. I see you, Cale. All of you. And I'm not running. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his other hand came up, cradling her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he'd said about being a weapon. Both sides of him, angel and demon, aligned in wanting this. Wanting her. The war fell silent for the first time in 2 centuries, and in that silence, she felt him clearly. Lonely. So lonely it ached like a physical wound. If I kiss you, he whispered, the bond will deepen. Your activation will accelerate. There's no going back from that. Good. Elena rose on her toes, closing the distance. I'm tired of going back. Their lips met, and the world ignited. The bond snapped into place. Like a circuit completing. Elena felt everything, his memories flooding into her consciousness in a torrent. She saw the night his parents died, felt the agony of a 7-year-old boy watching the only people who loved him torn apart by creatures that called themselves righteous. Felt hell's hands on him, molding him into a tool, teaching him to track debts the way others breathed. 200 years of collections played out in seconds. Faces, names, pleas for mercy he couldn't grant. And beneath it all, the constant war. Angels screaming no, don't hurt them. Demon hissing yes, fulfill the contract. His own consciousness crushed between them, making impossible choices every moment of every day, slowly splintering under pressure no being was meant to endure. But now there was something new. Her presence in his mind like cool water on burning skin. Her acceptance. Her choice to stand in his war instead of running from it. For the first time in 2 centuries, Cale Nocturne wasn't alone. When they broke apart, Elena was glowing, literally. Her skin emanated soft light, and her eyes, she could feel them changing, sharpening, seeing layers of reality she'd never accessed before. The witness blood was active now, fully awake. It worked, Kyle breathed. His hand was still on her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with reverence. You're manifesting. Elena looked at her hands. They pulsed with power she didn't understand yet. She could see the contracts on the table from across the room, read their terms without touching them, understand their binding force. More than that, she could sense their flaws. The places where hell had bent rules, exploited loopholes, relied on archaic laws that no longer applied. I can see them, she said. The contracts. They're not as solid as they pretend to be. Before Cale could respond, the temperature in the apartment plummeted. Elena's breath fogged, the lights flickered, and a voice, smooth, cultured, dripping with amusement, spoke from everywhere and nowhere. How delightful. The little architect has teeth now. Mammon materialized in the center of the room. Not the grotesque demon Elena had expected, but a man. Tall, elegant, in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. His eyes were the color of old gold, and his smile was the kind that made you want to count your fingers after shaking his hand. Cale moved instantly, putting himself between Elena and the Duke of Greed. His scars blazed, tattoos, writhing. You're not supposed to be here. Collection isn't due for 15 days. I'm not here to collect. Yet. Mammon's gaze slid past Cale to Elena, and she felt it like oil on her skin. I'm here to renegotiate. You see, when I made the contract with dear Marcus, I didn't realize what I was acquiring. A dormant witness. How careless of me. His smile widened. But now that she's active, now that she's bonded to my best collector, well, the value has increased exponentially. The contract. Terms are fixed, Cale growled. You can't change them retroactively. Oh, I'm not changing anything. I'm offering an alternative. Mammon produced a new contract from thin air, offered it to Elena. Your soul, given freely, in exchange for something you want very badly, Cale's freedom, every contract voided, every debt forgiven. He walks away clean. Elena's heart stopped. What? It's a lie, Cale said immediately. He's manipulating. I never lie. It's inefficient. Mammon's tone was pleasant, reasonable. The contract is legitimate. Witnessed blood can seal treaties. If she gives herself willingly, acknowledging full value, I'm bound by ancient law to honor equivalent exchange. One witness soul for 2 centuries of collected debt. Mathematically sound. Elena stared at the contract. It glowed with the same ember light as Cale's tattoos, and through her witness sight she could see it was real, not a trick. If she signed, Cale would be free. Everything he'd suffered for 200 years would end. All it would cost was her soul, her free will, eternity and damnation. Don't. Kyle's voice was raw. Don't even consider it. But you'd be free, she whispered. And you'd be damned. That's not freedom. That's just transferring the prison. He turned to Mammon, and both his eyes blazed. Amber and gray united in fury. Get out. The original contract stands. Does it? Mammon cocked his head. Because I'm sensing something interesting. The bond between you two isn't just formed. It's stabilizing. She's not just activating your contracts, Collector. She's neutralizing them. In a few more days, maybe a week, her witness authority will supersede my claim entirely. Kyle went very still. What? You didn't know? How precious. Mammon's laugh was soft, delighted. Mate bonds between Nephilim and witnesses were forbidden for this exact reason. They create a feedback loop. His supernatural nature amplifies her bloodline. Her authority shields his essence. Given enough time, she could rule every contract he carries invalid. You'd both walk free. Hope flared so bright in Elena's chest it hurt. Then we just wait. Let the bond finish. Except, Mammon interrupted, I can't allow that. Which is why, he snapped his fingers. The pain hit Elena like a freight train. She collapsed, screaming, as fire erupted in her veins. The mark on her wrist blazed so hot she smelled burning flesh. Through the agony, she heard Mammon's voice, still pleasant, still reasonable. The contract has an acceleration clause. If the collateral attempts to nullify the debt through supernatural means, collection becomes immediate. You have 60 seconds to decide, Miss Voss. Sign my new contract, save your Nephilim, and go peacefully. Or refuse, and I collect right now, messily. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pain was everything, burning away conscious thought. Through the bond, she felt Cale's anguish, his rage, his absolute helplessness. He was screaming. Something. But she couldn't hear over the fire consuming her from inside. 60 seconds. Sign or die. Save him or save herself. The contract appeared in her hand. A pen materialized. All she had to do was write her name. Her vision blurred, darkened. The pain peaked, and somewhere in the distance, she heard Mammon counting down. 10, 9, 8. Cale was pulling at her, trying to break Mammon's hold, but the Duke of Greed just smiled and held him back with a gesture. 7, 6, 5. Elena's hand moved toward the paper. Not her choice, the pain making the decision, anything to make it stop. 4, 3. Cale's voice cut through, desperate and broken. Don't you dare. I'm not worth it. Elena, please. 2. She looked up, met his eyes, saw 200 years of suffering, saw the future if she signed, him free, her damned, the mate bond carrying her screams into his mind for eternity, saw the alternative, both of them dying here, together, the bond incomplete. Neither option was survival. So Elena chose the third path. 1. She grabbed Kyle's hand and spoke the words her witness blood suddenly knew, ancient language that tasted like starlight and ash. I invoke the right of arbitration. As witness, I demand formal trial. My soul's value is contested. I claim the right to prove the original contract was signed under false pretense. The pain stopped instantly. Mammon's smile vanished, and somewhere in the distance, bells rang. Old bells, church bells, the kind that marked the beginning of something that couldn't be stopped. "You clever little thing," Mammon whispered. "You just declared war on hell itself." The bells didn't stop ringing. Mammon vanished the moment Elena spoke the invocation, but his final words hung in the air like smoke. War on hell itself. The apartment felt different now, charged, like reality had shifted an inch to the left, and nothing would ever fit quite right again. Kyle caught Elena as her legs gave out. The sudden absence of pain left her hollow, shaking. Through the bond, she felt his terror mixing with something that might have been pride. "What did you just do?" "I don't know." Her voice came out raw. The words just came, like my blood knew them even if I didn't. She looked at her wrist. The mark had changed. No longer just a scar, but a symbol, complex, layered, pulsing with light that shifted between gold and silver. "What is this?" "Arbitration seal." Cale's hands were gentle as he examined it, but his expression was grim. "You invoked one of the oldest supernatural laws. When a witness calls for formal trial, all parties are bound to appear before a neutral arbiter. The contract is frozen until judgment is rendered. So I bought us time? You bought us a death sentence." He released her wrist, paced to the window. His scars were flickering erratically, light and shadow fighting for dominance. Arbitration trials haven't been held in 3 centuries. The last witness who invoked one was executed, mid-trial for contempt. Mammon will bring every legal expert hell has. He'll twist every word, exploit every technicality. And if you lose, we lose anyway if I hadn't invoked it. No, you would have just died. Quick, relatively painless. He turned, and his eyes were haunted. Losing an arbitration trial means ritual execution, public, designed to discourage others from trying. They'll make it last days, Elena. And because we're bonded, I'll feel every second. The weight of what she'd done settled over her like ice water. She'd been so focused on stopping Mammon, on buying any escape, that she hadn't considered the cost of failure. How long until the trial? 7 days. Arbitration law requires a week's preparation for both sides. He moved to the table, began gathering contracts with shaking hands. "We need to build a case. Prove your father signed under duress or false pretense. Find witnesses who'll testify against a Duke of Hell. Somehow survive until..." Cale, Elena caught his hand, felt the tremor running through him. "Breathe. I can't." The words came out strangled. "You don't understand. I've collected souls for 200 years. I know how hell operates. They don't lose. Ever. The arbitration system exists to give the appearance of fairness while ensuring the outcome hell wants. You just volunteered us for theatrical execution." Through the bond, Elena felt it fully now. His fear. Not for himself. For her. The angel side was screaming, "Save her. Undo this. Offer yourself instead." The demon side was calculating odds, mapping escape routes, preparing for the inevitable failure. And beneath both, Cale's own consciousness was fracturing under the weight of helplessness he'd spent 2 centuries learning to suppress. She pulled him close, felt him resist, then collapse into her like a building finally giving in to gravity. His face pressed against her shoulder, breath coming in ragged gasps that might have been sobs if he'd let himself make sound. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her skin. "I should have protected you better. Should have found another way. Should have..." "Stop." Elena's fingers threaded through his hair. "You've been apologizing for things that aren't your fault for 200 years. It ends now." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "We're going to win this trial. Not because hell is fair, but because I can see truth now. Really see it. And if my father's contract was built on lies, I'll find them. Even if you find them, proving them is different. Hell's lawyers are ancient. Literally. They've been twisting words since language was invented. Then we find someone older. Cale blinked. There is no one older than Hell's legal department except... His eyes widened. No, absolutely not. Except what? Angels. He said it like a curse. The Celestial Council predates Hell's bureaucracy. They wrote the original arbitration laws. If anyone knows the loopholes, it's them. He shook his head violently. But they won't help us. I'm Nephilim. Abomination. They'd sooner execute me themselves than assist in my defense. What if they didn't know they were helping you? Elena's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. What if we approach them about the contract itself? About my father being coerced? I'm the victim here, human, innocent. Angels protect innocence, right? In theory. Cale's expression was conflicted. But getting an audience with the Celestial Council requires going through proper channels. Celestial bureaucracy makes Hell look efficient. It would take months to... Or, Elena interrupted, we find one angel, one who might actually care about justice instead of jurisdiction. Through the bond, she felt Cale's recognition before he said it. You want to find my father. Is he alive? Was, is, I don't know. Cale moved away, that familiar distance reasserting itself. He was a virtue, 8th choir, 3rd rank, executed for loving my mother. I watched him die, but angels don't die like humans do. They fragment, essence scattered across dimensions. If enough fragments remained coherent, he might have reformed. Diminished, but conscious. Would he help us? The laugh that escaped Kyle was broken glass. I don't know. I was 7 when they killed him. Every memory I have of him is love and light and then screaming. For all I know, he blames me for what happened. His fall, his execution. If his fragments reformed, he probably reformed hating what I am. Elena felt. The old wound through the bond. The child's belief that if he'd never been born, his parents would still be alive. 200 years, and Cale still carried that guilt like a stone in his chest. There's only one way to find out. Even if we locate him, even if he agrees to help, we still have the bigger problem. Cale pulled out Elena's contract, pointed to a clause she'd learned to read over the past days. This, collateral's essence shall be claimed in perpetuity should Mammon's legal claim be deemed valid. If we lose the trial, it's not just your soul he takes. It's your entire existence. Past, present, future. You'll be erased so completely that no one will remember you ever existed. The words should have terrified her. Maybe they did. But Elena found herself thinking about her life before all this. The 3 jobs, the inherited debt, the apartment she was being evicted from, the endless cycle of barely surviving. She'd been erased already, just slowly. At least this way she'd exist brightly before the end. Then we make sure we win. She squared her shoulders. How do we find your father? Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Resolution settling over despair. If she was committed to this suicide mission, he'd at least make sure she was prepared. We need to go to a threshold, a place where dimensional barriers are thin. Churches usually work, but we need one that's been deconsecrated. Holy ground would burn me on contact. There's an old cathedral in the warehouse district, closed down 15 years ago after it was condemned. Elena had photographed it once for an architecture project. Beautiful decay. Would that work? Perfectly. Kyle glanced at the window. Dusk was falling, painting the city in shades of amber and shadow. We go tonight. Calling angels is easier in darkness. They respond to desperation, and nothing sounds more desperate than prayers after sunset. They prepared in silence. Kyle changed into clothes that covered his tattoos, hid his scars beneath a high collar, trying to look less supernatural, though the attempt was futile. His eyes alone marked him as other. Elena watched him armor himself against rejection, against the possibility that his father would see him and feel only disgust. "If he hates what you are," she said quietly, "then he's not worth finding." Cale's smile was sad. "He has every right to hate me. I'm the reason he fell. You were a child. Children aren't responsible for their parents' choices. Tell that to hell. They've been collecting debts from children for millennia." He opened the door, gestured for her to follow. "Come on. We have 6 days before trial. Let's go see if my father's fragments remember love or only regret." The walk to the cathedral took 40 minutes. Elena felt the supernatural landscape shifting as they moved through the city. Her witness sight showed her everything now. Demons in business suits negotiating contracts in coffee shops. Angels disguised as homeless watching for signs of corruption. The invisible web of wards and protections normal humans navigated without knowing. She saw people marked for collection, their souls already dimming. Saw others blazing bright, so much goodness in them that demons couldn't get close. She saw how thin the veil was, how close damnation always stood to salvation. The cathedral loomed against the night sky, Gothic spires reaching toward stars they'd never touch again. The front doors were chained, but Kyle led her around back to a gap in the fence. Inside, the space was cavernous and ruined. Pews rotting, stained glass shattered, the altar overturned and covered in graffiti that seemed to squirm when Elena looked directly at it. "Threshold," Kyle confirmed. "I can feel it. The barriers are almost transparent here." He moved to the center of the nave, began drawing symbols in the dust with his fingers. Angelic script. She recognized it now, could read the plea he was writing. "I need you to call him. Angels don't respond to Nephilim prayers. But a witness, newly awakened, crying for help, that they might answer." Elena knelt beside him in the dust and decay. "What do I say?" "The truth." Kale's hand found hers, squeezed once. That's all angels ever wanted to hear. She closed her eyes. Let her witness blood guide the words. "I call on Raziel, virtue of the 8th choir, angel of secrets and sacrifice. I am Elena Voss, witness awakened, and I need your help, not for myself, for your son." Silence. Then the temperature spiked, heat like standing too close to the sun. Elena's eyes flew open as light poured through the broken ceiling, coalescing into a form that made her gasp. The angel was beautiful the way forest fires were beautiful. Dangerous, consuming, impossible to look away from. Wings of light and silver, eyes that held entire galaxies. Presence so overwhelming, Elena felt her knees buckle. But it was his face that made her chest tighten. She could see Kale there, in the line of his jaw, the shape of his eyes, the way light and shadow both clung to him like they couldn't decide where he belonged. Raziel looked at Kale, and his expression broke into something Elena had no name for. Joy and agony and recognition all colliding. "My son," the angel whispered. "You're alive." Kale's face was wet. He hadn't even realized he was crying. "You remember me? I have never forgotten." Raziel moved closer, and Elena saw his light was fractured, incomplete. He'd reformed but barely, diminished. "Every fragment I scattered carried your name. When I pieced myself together, the first thing I searched for was you. But hell hid you well. I'm a collector now. I damn souls. I'm everything you tried to save me from becoming." The words came out raw, confession and apology tangled together. "You're alive," Raziel repeated, and his hand, burning, radiant, reached out to touch Kale's face. "That is all that matters. Everything I did, every choice, was to give you a chance to be more than what they made you. And here you are, still fighting, still trying." His gaze shifted to Elena, and she felt the weight of divine assessment. "And you've found someone who sees past the war to the soul beneath. Someone willing to stand trial against hell itself for you." "We need your help," Elena said. The trial. Mammon's contract. I cannot testify. Raziel's voice was gentle but firm. I am diminished. My word carries no weight. In arbitration. But he reached into his own chest, and Elena watched in horror as he pulled out a fragment of light, a piece of his essence. Take this, a virtue's testimony, given freely, recorded in my own essence. It contains everything I witnessed about contract law, about hell's manipulations, about the loopholes they don't want found. Kyle stared at the light. That will fragment you further. You might not survive another division. Then let this be my final sacrifice. Raziel pressed the essence into Kale's hands. I failed to protect you as a child. Let me protect you now. He looked at Elena. Witness, you carry my son's heart now. Guard it well. And when you stand before arbitration, remember, hell's greatest weapon is making you believe you're powerless. But you're a witness. Truth is your domain. Use it. He was fading already, giving too much, burning out like a candle in a hurricane. Elena felt Kale's anguish spike through the bond as his father dissolved back into scattered light. But before he vanished completely, Raziel whispered, I'm proud of you, my son. I always was. Then he was gone. Just dust motes dancing in moonlight and the memory of wings. Kyle stood there holding his father's essence, shaking. Elena wrapped her arms around him, felt him shatter against her, 200 years of grief finally finding release. He sobbed like the child who'd watched his father die, and she held him like the choice he'd made by loving her was worth every consequence that followed. 6 days until trial. But now they had a weapon hell didn't expect. Truth, love, and an angel's final sacrifice. 3 days before trial, and Elena could no longer tell where she ended and Kale began. The bond had deepened after absorbing Raziel's essence. Now, when she closed her eyes, she saw through Kale's memories as clearly as her own. Felt his heartbeat sync with hers. Tasted his thoughts before he spoke them. The constant war inside him had become her war, too. Angel and demon screaming competing orders, while his consciousness tried desperately to chart a path between them. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was the most intimate thing she'd ever experienced. They sat across from each other in his apartment, Raziel's essence suspended between them in a containment circle Kale had drawn in salt and blood. The light pulsed gently, and when Elena concentrated, she could hear whispers, ancient legal precedents, contract loopholes, testimonies from trials millennia old. Everything Raziel had witnessed in his existence, compressed into a fragment the size of a heart. We need to integrate it, Kyle said quietly. His eyes hadn't left the essence since they'd returned from the cathedral. For you to use this knowledge in trial, it has to become part of your witness authority, which means absorbing angelic essence directly into your bloodline. Will it hurt? Yes. He finally looked at her, and she saw the guilt written in every line of his face. It'll feel like your veins are on fire. Your human body isn't designed to contain divine energy. It'll fight the integration, try to reject it. You'll have to consciously accept the essence, hold it inside yourself even when every instinct screams to expel it. How long does it take? Hours. Maybe longer, depending on your resistance. His hand moved toward hers, stopped. I'll be with you the whole time. Through the bond, you can use my resilience. I'm half angel. My body's designed to hold divine energy. But Elena, if this goes wrong, if your body can't adapt, it could kill you. And if I don't do it, we lose the trial and I die anyway. She reached across the circle, took his hand, felt his fear mixing with her determination through the bond. We don't have a choice. We always have a choice. His fingers tightened around hers. You could run, disappear, make Mammon hunt you the old-fashioned way, It would buy time. For what? A few months of hiding before he finds me? A year if I'm lucky? Elena shook her head. I'm tired of running from debts I didn't create. This ends in 3 days, one way or another. I'd rather end it standing my ground than cowering in whatever hole might hide me temporarily. Through the bond, she felt his resistance crumble, felt the angel in him recognize her courage, felt the demon reluctantly respect her refusal to be prey. And beneath both, felt Cale himself, the consciousness caught between light and dark, swell with something that felt dangerously close to love. Then we do this now, he said, before I lose my nerve and lock you somewhere safe until trial. They prepared in silence. Cale strengthened the containment circle, added protections that would keep the essence stable during transfer. Elena stripped to a tank top. He needed access to her arms, her collarbone, the places where veins ran closest to skin. She tried not to think about how clinical this was, how it felt like preparing for surgery except the anesthetic was trust, and the surgeon was a man who'd collected souls for 2 centuries. Lie down, Cale instructed, and she did, stretching out on his floor inside the circle. He knelt beside her, gathering Raziel's essence carefully. In his hands, the light pulsed brighter, responding to familiar DNA. Once I start, you can't fight it. The essence will seek your bloodline, try to anchor itself. It'll hurt worse than anything you've felt, but you have to let it in. Understand? Elena nodded. I trust. You. Something in his expression fractured. You shouldn't. Before she could respond, he pressed the essence against her chest, directly over her heart. Pain detonated through her nervous system like a bomb. Elena screamed, back arching, every muscle locking as divine fire poured into her veins. It was worse than Mammon's acceleration claws, worse than anything human biology was designed to process. She felt her cells rejecting the intrusion, felt her blood trying to expel the foreign energy, felt her body interpreting angelic essence as poison and flooding her with desperate signals to purge, expel, die if necessary to stop this. Through it all, Cale's voice. Stay with me. Don't fight it. Let it in, Elena. Let it change you. She couldn't. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except drown in agony that had no end. Her witness sight exploded open. She saw everything. Every contract Cale had ever signed. Every soul he'd collected. Every moment of his 200-year. Existence cascading through her consciousness in a torrent she couldn't process. She saw his mother's death, felt his child self's horror, saw Hell's hands molding him into a weapon, saw every collection breaking him a little more, and she saw herself, through his eyes, saw the moment he'd first entered her apartment and felt the bond spark, how the angel in him had screamed protect her while the demon calculated her value, saw him watching her research desperately for escape, saw his hands shake, as he'd considered letting her run, saw the exact moment he'd decided her survival mattered more than his orders. He loved her, had loved her before she'd ever chosen him, had been willing to fail, to face Hell's punishment, just to give her a chance. The realization steadied her, gave her something to anchor to while divine fire rewrote her DNA. Elena stopped fighting, let Raziel's essence sink deeper, felt her bloodline accept it, integrate it, transform. When she opened her eyes, the world had changed again. Everything was sharper, clearer. She could see the structure of reality itself, the laws binding supernatural entities, the contracts holding realms separate, the precise architecture of every deal ever made. Raziel's knowledge was hers now. 2,000 years of observing heaven's legal system, understanding Hell's exploitations, witnessing the exact moments when justice became politics. And she could see the flaw in her father's contract, clear as daylight, glowing like a neon sign in a language only witnesses could read. I can see it, she whispered. Kyle helped her sit up, and she grabbed the contract with shaking hands. Here, This clause: collateral shall be claimed upon signatory's death should debt remain unpaid. But look at the timestamp. It was added 3 days after my father signed, after he'd already received treatment. Kyle leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. His breath caught. Mammon amended the contract post-signature. That's illegal even. By hell's standards. The original terms were just his soul, just my father's. Elena's voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. I was never supposed to be collateral. Mammon added me later when he realized what bloodline I carried. He knew I'd manifest eventually. Knew a witness soul was worth more than a desperate architect's. But if your father didn't agree to the amendment, he couldn't have. He was already cured. Already thought the debt was settled. Elena looked up, met Cale's eyes, saw hope dawning there, fragile and terrified. The contract is void. Mammon's entire claim is fraudulent. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then Cale pulled her against him, holding so tight her ribs ached. Through the bond, she felt everything. His relief, his disbelief, his absolute terror that this hope would be ripped away. We need to verify, cross-reference with the original filing. If we can prove the amendment was unauthorized, we can. Elena pulled back just enough to see his face. Raziel's essence showed me how to access Hell's records. Every contract ever filed is stored in the Infernum archives. If we can get the original, the archives are in Hell. Literal Hell. Dimension of eternal torment, guarded by things that make lesser demons look friendly. Kyle was already shaking his head. Even if we could get there, which we can't without an authorized escort, finding one contract among billions would take 7 minutes. They both spun toward the new voice. A woman stood in the apartment. Appeared, really, like she'd been edited into reality. Elderly, silver-haired, wearing a cardigan that looked hand-knitted and sensible shoes. She looked like someone's grandmother, except her eyes were too old, too knowing, and she carried a library card that glowed faintly with power, that made Elena's newly enhanced witness sight water. Who? Cale started. Librarian, the woman said simply. The Infernum archives answer to no demon lord. We're neutral. Cosmic clerks maintaining reality's paperwork, and when a witness awakens, we pay attention. She stepped fully into the apartment, and Elena realized the woman wasn't quite solid, slightly translucent, a projection. You want the original Voss contract, unaltered version. I can retrieve it. Why would you help us? Elena asked carefully. Because fraudulent amendments offend me professionally. The librarian's expression was prim. Mammon falsified filing documents, backdated timestamps, used his position to corrupt records meant to be immutable. That's not just illegal. It's sloppy. I won't have sloppy work associated with my archives. Cale moved protectively in front of Elena. What's the price? Nothing in the supernatural world is free. Smart boy. The librarian's smile was approving. The price is simple. When you win your trial, and you will, armed with proof of fraud, you'll establish precedent. Witnesses can audit Hell's contracts. That precedent will let me do my job properly for the first time in 3,000 years. Every fraudulent contract I've had to file, every falsified document I've been forced to process, all of it becomes reviewable. She held out her hand. In it, a piece of paper materialized. The contract. Original. Unaltered. So yes, I'm invested in your victory. Elena took the document with trembling hands. It was exactly as she'd suspected. The original terms mentioned only Marcus Voss's soul. No collateral. No firstborn. No mention of Elena at all. Mammon had added her later, forging her father's signature, betting no one would ever check. He'd been right. Until now. This is enough, she breathed. This proves everything. Almost everything. The librarian's expression turned serious. You'll also need proof your father didn't consent to the amendment, which means summoning his spirit. Kale's voice was grim. Calling the dead to testify. That's dangerous magic, especially for someone who's been dead 6 months. The spirit might be fragmented, incoherent. Or it might tell you that your father knew exactly what he was doing and chose to sacrifice you anyway, the librarian added bluntly. Are you prepared for that answer, Miss Voss? Elena thought about her father, the man who'd raised her alone after her mother died, who'd worked 2 jobs to keep her in school, who'd looked at her with tears in his eyes and apologized for dying. Had that all been performance? Had he known he was trading her? Even then, I need the truth, she said finally. Whatever it is. The librarian nodded. Then you'll perform the summoning tomorrow. Give yourself time to recover from the essence integration. You'll need full strength for what comes next. She began to fade. 2 days until trial. Use them wisely. She vanished. Kyle and Elena stood in the silent apartment, holding proof of Mammon's fraud, knowing it wasn't quite enough. We summon him at midnight tomorrow, Kyle said quietly. In a cemetery. On his grave. I'll guide you through the ritual, but Elena... He caught her face, made her look at him. Whatever he says, whatever truth comes out, remember that his choices aren't yours. You're not responsible for what he did. What if he did know? What if he looked at me and decided his 6 extra years were worth my eternity? Then he was wrong. Kyle's voice was fierce. And you're still worth saving. Still worth every risk. Still worth... He stopped. Swallowed hard. Through the bond, Elena felt what he couldn't say. The words trapped behind 2 centuries of conditioning that insisted he didn't deserve soft things. She kissed him instead. Poured everything she felt through the bond. Gratitude, trust, the fragile hope that maybe they'd actually survive this. When they broke apart, his eyes were wet. 2 days, she whispered against his lips. Then we end this. Together, he agreed. Whatever comes next, we face it together. That night, Elena dreamed of her father. Not memories. Something more. A warning or a confession. She couldn't tell. He stood in shadow, reaching toward her, mouth moving urgently. But no sound came out. Just silence and the sense of something desperately important left unsaid. She woke to Kale's arms around her, his steady heartbeat against her back, and the knowledge that tomorrow she'd have to face whatever truth her father's spirit carried. 2 days until trial. 1 day until she learned whether her father had loved her or used her. The countdown continued. But now, finally, they had a chance. The arbitration chamber existed outside normal space, carved from reality's margins where heaven and hell had agreed to meet on neutral ground. Elena stepped through the threshold with Kale at her side and felt the weight of every supernatural being in existence watching. The room was vast, circular, with galleries rising in tiers that disappeared into darkness. Thousands of eyes tracked their entrance, angels in the upper levels radiating. Cold disapproval, demons below writhing with anticipation, and everywhere else, the in-between creatures who'd come to witness something unprecedented. A witness, challenging hell itself. Mammon sat at the prosecution table looking immaculate in his tailored suit, flanked by 3 lawyers whose eyes were too old for their faces. He smiled when he saw Elena, the kind of smile that said he'd already won, and was just waiting for everyone else to realize it. The arbiter materialized at the head of the chamber, neither angel nor demon, but something ancient that predated both. Robed in silver that moved like mercury, face hidden behind a mask that reflected whoever looked at it. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The arbitration of Contract 777492, Marcus Voss signatory, Elena Voss collateral, Mammon claimant. The witness has invoked right of trial. State your challenge. Elena stood, her witness mark burning bright on her wrist. The words came steady despite her hammering heart. I challenge the validity of the contract on grounds of fraudulent amendment. The collateral clause was added post-signature without signatory consent. I present the original filing as evidence. The librarian had come through. The document materialized in the air above the chamber, both versions side by side, original and amended. Gasps rippled through the galleries. Even Mammon's lawyers looked surprised, which told Elena they hadn't known about the Bois fraud either. Mammon's smile never wavered. An administrative correction. The signatory's intent was always to include collateral. The amendment merely clarified existing terms. Liar. The word came out before Elena could stop it, powered by her witness blood. The chamber reverberated with the force of absolute truth. Mammon actually flinched. You added the collateral clause 3 days after signing, when you discovered my bloodline. You forged my father's consent, because you knew a witness. Soul was worth more than you'd originally contracted for. Prove it. Mammon's voice was silk over steel. Show me evidence that Marcus Voss didn't consent to the amendment. This was the moment. Everything balanced on what came next. Elena pulled the summoning circle ingredients from her bag. Salt, grave dirt from her father's plot, a photograph from his funeral. She'd performed the ritual at midnight as planned, Kyle guiding her through the ancient words. Her father's spirit had come. Fragmentary, weak, but coherent enough to speak. And what he'd said had broken her. I call Marcus Voss to testify, Elena declared. The chamber darkened, temperature plummeting as the veil between life and death thinned. Her father's spirit materialized in the witness circle, translucent, edges flickering, but unmistakably him. His eyes found Elena, and even in death, even as a ghost, she saw his love, and his shame. The arbiter's voice. Spirit of Marcus Voss, you are bound to truth. Did you consent to the amendment adding your daughter as collateral? No. Her father's voice was wind through leaves. I signed for my soul only. When Mammon approached me 3 days later claiming he needed clarification, I refused. Told him the deal was done. I'd received my cure. We were settled. He looked at Mammon with contempt that transcended death. You told me you'd take her anyway. Said supernatural law allowed retrospective amendments if filed within a week. I didn't know enough to argue. The chamber erupted. Angels and demons shouting over each other, the arbiter calling for order. Mammon's lawyers were frantically flipping through documents, realizing their client had lied to them too. But Mammon himself just laughed. So what? He signed the original contract, used demonic resources, created the debt. Whether the collateral was specified initially or added later is semantics. The debt exists. It must be paid. Not by me. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. I wasn't party to the original contract. I didn't consent to be traded. Under supernatural law, collateral must be agreed upon by all parties, or it's considered slavery, which even hell outlawed in 1523. She'd found that in Raziel's essence. A law passed after a particularly brutal case where demons had been claiming children as collateral without parental consent. Hell had agreed to ban the practice, not out of morality, but because heaven had threatened war. The law still stood, rarely invoked, because few knew it existed. Mammon's smile finally cracked. That law applies to children. She was 20 when her father signed. But I was supposed to be collateral from birth, wasn't I? Elena pulled out the final piece of evidence, her birth certificate. Look at the date. My birthday is April 19th. My father signed your contract September 14th, exactly 5 months after I turned 20. You were waiting until I was no longer a child so the slavery law wouldn't apply. But you got impatient, couldn't wait to see if I'd manifest as witness. So you amended the contract, forged consent, and hoped no one would check. The arbiter leaned forward. Is this accurate, Duke Mammon? For the first time, the demon lord looked uncomfortable. The amendment was within standard business practices. The amendment was fraud. The arbiter's voice carried judgment like thunder. And the attempt to claim a witness soul through fraudulent means violates the covenant of neutrality. Witnesses are protected arbiters. They cannot be owned. Mammon stood abruptly. She wasn't a witness when the contract was signed. She manifested later. Because you hunted her. Cale's voice rang out. He'd been silent until now, but Elena felt his fury through the bond. You sent collectors, demons, created the supernatural pressure that forced her awakening. You manufactured the very condition that should invalidate your claim. The arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then, Contract 777492 is hereby declared void. All claims against Elena Voss are dissolved. Mammon, you are fined for fraudulent filing and attempted enslavement of a protected class. You will submit to audit of all contracts signed in the last century. The chamber erupted again. Mammon's face contorted with rage, but he couldn't argue. The arbiter's word was law. Elena felt her wrist burn one final time, and then nothing. The mark faded, disappeared, the contract's hold, releasing like chains falling away. She'd won. She was free. But Mammon's voice cut through her relief. And what of the collector? Cale Nocturne failed to deliver the contracted soul. His own debts become due immediately. Elena's heart stopped. She'd been so focused on her freedom she'd forgotten Cale's contracts, the ones binding him to hell. If he failed a collection, they activated, and he'd just failed. Publicly, in front of every demon lord with a claim on him. Cale's face was calm, resigned, like he'd known this was coming. I understand. I'm prepared to— No. Elena's voice was steel. I invoke witness authority. As awakened arbiter, I claim right to audit all contracts binding Cale Nocturne. The arbiter tilted its head. That is unprecedented. But legal. Elena channeled everything Raziel had given her. Witnesses arbitrate supernatural law. That includes reviewing contracts for legitimacy. I demand audit. You can't, Mammon started. I can. Elena's mark blazed. Back to life. But different now. Not contract bond, but witness seal. Authority given form. And I will. Every contract, every clause, every demon lord who thinks they own him will submit to review. The chamber fell silent. No one had challenged Hell's contract system this directly in millennia. It was suicide, political warfare, a declaration that witnesses were taking back their role as true arbiters instead of just symbolic figures. The arbiter studied her, then slowly nodded. Audit granted. All contracts binding Cale Nocturne are frozen pending witness review. Duration 1 year. If fraudulent clauses are found, they will be voided. If contracts are legitimate, they will be enforced. 1 year. Elena felt Cale's shock through the bond. 1 year of freedom before hell could come for him again. 1 year to find every loophole, every flaw, every fraudulent clause in 2 centuries of contracts. It wasn't forever, but it was a chance. Mammon stood, fury radiating from him like heat. This isn't over, witness. You've made an enemy today. I made an enemy the moment you tried to claim me. Elena's voice was steady. The difference is now I have the authority to fight back. The arbiter dismissed the chamber. Reality folded, and Elena found herself back in the mortal world, Cale beside her, both of them breathing like they'd run miles. You saved me, he said quietly. Damned yourself politically to save me. I gave us time. Elena took his hand. 1 year to break. Every chain hell put on you. 1 year to prove Nephilim don't have to be slaves. Hell won't forget this. Every demon lord I've contracted with will fight the audit. They'll come after you, try to discredit you, maybe try to kill you. Let them try. She pulled him close, felt the bond between them solid and unbreakable. I'm a witness. You're the most dangerous collector hell ever created. Together, we're not victims anymore. We're a threat. Cale laughed, and it sounded like breaking chains. What do we do now? Elena thought about her apartment she'd been evicted from, her jobs she'd stopped showing up to, the normal life she'd lost the moment Cale walked through her door. That life was gone, but in its place was something bigger, something that mattered. "We build something new," she said. "A place for Nephilim who want freedom, for humans marked by contracts they didn't make. We use my authority to tear down Hell's corrupt system one fraudulent contract at a time. That's going to take more than a year. Then it's a good thing we have eternity." She kissed him, felt his surprise and joy through the bond. "The mate bond is complete. You're stuck with me. I can think of worse fates." His arms wrapped around her, and for the first time in 2 centuries, Cale Nocturne felt something other than war inside his chest. He felt peace, hope, home, in an apartment that would become a sanctuary, in a city that hid supernatural wars beneath mundane surfaces. 2 people who'd been marked for damnation chose a different ending. Not perfect, not safe, but theirs. Elena looked at the sunrise painting the sky gold and pink. 1 year to audit 2 centuries of contracts. 1 year to build the impossible. 1 year to prove that love could be stronger than Hell's chains. "We're going to change everything," she whispered. Cale smiled against her hair. "Already have." And somewhere in the depths of Hell, 12 demon lords received notice that their contracts were under review, that a witness had awakened, that the system they'd exploited for millennia was about to be audited by someone who could see every lie they'd ever told. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in history, Hell wasn't guaranteed to win. Because Elena Voss, witness of truth, and Cale Nocturne, the collector who'd learned to choose love over orders, had something Hell could never understand. They had each other, and that made them unstoppable. Sometimes the debts we inherit aren't written in contracts. They're woven into the fabric of our lives, passed down through choices we never made and sacrifices we never asked for. Elena's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. How much of our identity is truly ours, and how much was decided before we ever had a voice? Would you have signed away your soul to save someone you love? Would you have fought an unwinnable battle against forces beyond comprehension, or accepted the fate others wrote for you? And when, faced with a monster who turned out to be more human than the systems claiming to be righteous, would you have had the courage to see past the war to the soul beneath? This story reminds us that freedom is never given. It's claimed. Sometimes at costs that seem unbearable, through alliances that seem impossible, by standing in spaces where we were never meant to exist and declaring that our lives are worth fighting for. Elena didn't just break a contract. She broke the idea that we must accept the chains others place on us simply because they've always been there. She chose love when wisdom said run. She chose truth when lies were safer. She chose to build something new instead of surviving something broken. What debts are you carrying that were never yours to begin with? What would you sacrifice for the person standing beside you in the war? If you found this story moving, if it made you question what you'd fight for when the world says you've already lost, share it with someone who needs to hear that even impossible battles can be won. Like this video if Elena and Cale's journey resonated with your soul. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that explore the beautiful, terrifying space between damnation and redemption. Because sometimes the most powerful act of rebellion is refusing to accept the ending someone else wrote for you.